President Trump last night saying he has no idea if he can reach an agreement with Democrats to end the partial government shutdown. The president also doubling down on his threat to declare a national emergency to fund the border wall. We'll get into all of that in a moment, but we begin this morning with breaking news on the foreign policy front. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that last September, National Security Advisor John Bolton asked the Pentagon to provide military options on striking Iran. Joining me right now is Republican Senator from Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn. She serves on the Armed Services and Commerce Committees and is one of the first women to serve on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Sure.
I want to get to the border wall funding and all of the issues around that. But let me begin with this breaking news. John Bolton requesting from Pentagon strike options against Iran. Your thoughts on that? Is that something that surprised you in terms of potentially striking Iran?
Maria, I think that what you are seeing with the national security team and those that are working to make certain that we are increasing our strength in the Middle East is viewing all options. And indeed, this past week, we have voted twice on a bill strengthening America's presence in the Middle East. And this includes legislation that is vitally important to Israel, our greatest ally. It is military and financial support for them. It is provisions to help combat BDS and that movement, which is boycott, divestment. And we want to make certain that we shore Israel up, that we also provide provisions in this legislation for Jordan, who is a key regional ally, vitally important as we look at the Middle East. And what we have seen from the Democrats is just obstruction. They have voted against this twice. We're going to go with this again on Monday and see if we can again have another tool in the toolbox to deal with bad actors. This legislation also has provisions that would hold Syria's brutal regime accountable for torture and murder of innocent civilians.
And we know Prime Minister Netanyahu confirmed on Friday that, in fact, Israel war plans did target Iran planes, but here we've got this evidence that the U.S. and Israel are in step with fighting harsh and plainly against Iran, and yet the president has announced he's withdrawing troops from Syria. So does these two issues jive together?
We have received a classified briefing on Syria, and of course you can appreciate that I'm not able to talk about much of what is in that briefing. I will say the legislation that Senator Rubio has brought forward that the Democrats have voted against twice is vitally important for us as we take it up again for a third vote. And I appreciate Leader McConnell's persistence in trying to move this forward.
Senator, the president announced that he's withdrawing troops from Syria, and yet Secretary of State Pompeo is on the ground in the Middle East saying, we're here, we will make sure that the troops on the ground that remain and our Kurdish partners in this are not harmed. Has the plans changed? Has the mission changed?
I don't think it would be appropriate to say that the mission has changed. I think it is appropriate to say that the military is looking at a systematic, stable process of withdrawing troops from Syria, but also of the U.S. maintaining this leadership, moving towards stability in the Middle East. And you will see that continue. Secretary Pompeo, you also have John Bolton, who is working on these issues. And Maria, what we want to make certain is that as our military moves forward, they have the tools, the training, the equipment that they need to do their job, that we are listening to the commanders that are on the ground there, and whether it is the diplomatic or the military side, that we are working in a coordinated and cohesive way to make certain that we protect Americans.
Let me switch gears and talk a bit about the shutdown and border security. We know that the majority of Americans are opposing the border wall, 54%, according to a new ABC News Washington Post poll. But those numbers, this gap is actually lessening here. So it looks like the American people are recognizing that that a border security is of the utmost importance. Let me ask you, should the president declare a national emergency here?
My hope is that the Democrats will come to the table and will be able to resolve this. Congress should be the ones to take the lead. And you're right, more Americans are looking at this, and they are saying, I hear it from Tennesseans every single day, look, stop the drug traffickers, the human traffickers, the gangs from coming in this country, because until that southern border is secure, you are going to have every state a border state and every town a border town. And they want to get this issue resolved, securing that border. And Maria, it's important to realize walls work. Ask Israel. Walls work. Look at the Border Patrol. They say they need 3 things, and they tell us this regularly. They need a barrier, they need technology, and they need more border agents and officers that are there on the ground to help with this situation. And trafficking has dropped in areas where there is a border wall. You have less illegal entry, and that is what they're saying that they need. So I think that it is outrageous that they do not want to give the Border Patrol what they need to secure the border and to secure the sovereignty of this nation.
Well, it's interesting because we're looking at a graphic right now of the current wall and fencing. 30% of the border already has a wall. And last week on this program, we spoke with one of your colleagues on the House side, Congressman Mac Thornberry, on Foreign Affairs. And here's what he said about the current situation. Listen to this.
For years, way before President Obama was elected, the Border Patrol experts said you need a combination of things. You need physical barriers, you need people, and you need technology. All 3 of them. So I was struck this week when Speaker Pelosi said this is a moral issue. We already have some sort of barrier across 30% of the border. To go to 40% is a moral issue. It just tells me this is politics, and the disappointing thing is the country, the best interests of the country do not seem to be the first consideration. It's all about political positioning.
And Senator, we know that Nancy Pelosi has voted for a border wall, border security twice before. Barack Obama has. Others have as well, Senator Schumer. And yet now when President Trump wants to do it, she says it's immoral, even though we already have the wall and 30%. Your reaction to this, because we know that 800,000 government employees have not been paid, and it feels like this is people playing politics, frankly.
Well, it does feel like people playing politics because there is an offer that is there on the table. And we all have concern about the portion of government that is in shutdown and the employees that are not being paid. And for the Democratic leadership to say absolutely not, will not negotiate, is unfair to them. And I'll tell you something else, Maria. If I were someone who had a dreamer in my family, and I talked with someone yesterday who's helping a family. 2 children are dreamers, 2 were born here. And you know what? They were expressing their frustration that the Democratic leadership is not coming to the table when they know the president and Republicans have said, let's address the dreamer issue. Let's secure the southern border. Let's get government reopened. And I think that more people are becoming frustrated. You were just talking about the polling and showing how more Americans are coming forward in favor of the wall. They realize every town's a border town, every state's a border state, until you secure it and end illegal entry of drugs, human trafficking, sex trafficking, and gangs.
Do you think we'll get a resolution this week?
My hope is that we do.